हरे कृष्ण। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदना ब्रज जनरंजना यशोदानंदना ब्रज जनरंजना जमुना तीरावनचारी जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय राधा गोपीनाथ राधे जय गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय जय जय प्रभुपाद निताय गौर हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल। ISKCON विविटी फाउंडर आचार्य His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 2nd chapter. Chapter is entitled the Hiranyakashipu, the king of demons. Verse 20 to 26. The verse goes as follows. Esh atma viparyaso hya alinge linga bhavana एष प्रिया प्रियैर्योगो वियोगः कर्म संस्मृतिः संभवश्च विनाशश्च शोकश्च विविधस्मृताः अविवेकश्च चिंता च विवेका अस्मृतिरेव च. Word to word translation is as follows: Eshah, this Atma Viparyasah, bewilderment of the living being, indeed, a linge, in that which does not possess a material body. Linga bhavana, accepting the material body to be the self. Eshah, this priya, with those who are very dear. Apriya, with those who are not dear, enemies, those not in the family, etc. Yoga, connection. Viyoga, separation. Karma, the fruits of action. Samsmritihi, the material condition of life. Sambhava, accepting birth. Cha, and vinashah, accepting death. Cha, and shokah, lamentation. Cha, and vividah, varieties. Smritah, mentioned in scripture. Avivekah, lack of discrimination. Cha, and chinta, anxiety. Cha, also viveka, of proper discrimination. Asmritihi, forgetfulness. Eva, indeed. Cha, also. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In his bewildered state, the living entity, accepting the body and mind to be the self, considers some people to be his kinsmen and others to be outsiders. Because of this misconception, he suffers. Indeed, the accumulation of such concocted material ideas is the cause of suffering and so-called happiness in the material world. The conditioned soul, thus situated, must take birth in different species and work in various types of consciousness, thus creating new bodies. This continued material life is called samsara. Birth, death, lamentation, foolishness, and anxiety are due to such material considerations. Thus we sometimes come to a proper understanding and sometimes we fall again to a wrong conception of life. Verse number 27. Atrapi udaharantim itihasam puratanam yamasya preta bandhunam samvadam tam nibodhata. The next verse translation states as follows: In this regard, an example is given from an old history. This involves a discourse between Yamaraj and the friends of a dead person. Please hear it attentively. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The words Itihasam Puratanam mean an old history. The Puranas are not chronologically recorded, but the incidents mentioned in the Puranas are actual histories of bygone ages. Srimad Bhagavatam is the Mahapuran, the essence of all the Puranas. The Mayavadi scholars do not accept the Puranas, but Srila Madhvacharya and all other authorities accept them as the authoritative histories of the world. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Shri Swayam Rupa Kadamaiham Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh Tarine Vancha Kalpatarubhescha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। पंचतत्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूपस्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकम्। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकाकांत राधाकांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam 7th canto, which canto is entitled The Science of God, and we are into the second chapter, Hiranyakashipu, the king of demons. And we see the character and trait of a demoniac personality, how he acts in regards to fulfilling his own selfish motives, and to fulfill his desire and intention, he can take shelter of each and any of the means. And the chapter starts, we have heard that Hiranyakashipu's brother, whose name was Hiranyaksha, was killed by Lord Varahadev in the form of a boar incarnation, because Hiranyaksha was tormenting the universe with his atrocities, and in fact he tried to usurp Lord's energy in the form of Bhudevi, the earth planet. He drowned the earth planet deep down into the Garbhodak ocean, and Varahadev appeared, and very sportingly he killed Hiranyaksha, and it was a great fight witnessed by all the denizens of heavenly planets, all the Siddhas, and all the way up to Lord Brahma Loka's planet. All the people witnessed the dramatic fighting between Hiranyaksha and Lord Varahadev. And after the death of Lord Varahadev, now Hiranyakashipu, he exhibits a real diplomatic behavior and hypocritical behavior, which we are discussing in this chapter. And Hiranyaksha, when Hiranyaksha was killed, Hiranyakashipu reacted very sinfully, and he tried to diminish the religious activities of all the people in general. So that's what the evil people do. They try to diminish the good activities which are going on in the society for the welfare and prosperity of the society. And on the contrary, his nephews, the sons and the relatives of Hiranyaksha, who were very aggrieved and lamenting for the death of their father, Hiranyakashipu very diplomatically consoles them and pacifies them, and he quotes from the very Vedic scriptures, from the Shastras, and he gives a very philosophical perspective of how one should accept death of a near one. And Hiranyakashipu initially, when he sees that Hiranyaksha has been killed, he accuses, he gets so angry at Lord Vishnu and the demigods, he accuses the Supreme Personality of Godhead of being partial to the demigods, to the saintly people. We studied in the first chapter of this canto. The chapter is entitled "The Supreme Lord is equal to everyone." And now Hiranyakashipu is accusing the Lord how he is partial and he differentiates between the demons and the demigods or the saintly people. And he says that, see, he killed my brother, Lord Varaha killed my brother Hiranyaksha, and it is not his job to kill my brother, because he is supposed to be impartial. Whatever my brother is doing, Lord Vishnu has to accept and accommodate him. So, and in response, Hiranyakashipu, he begins to agitate the demons, and demons and Rakshasas, and he tells them to disturb all the religious ceremonies which are going on the earth planet. All the peaceful sages and other inhabitants of earth planet, they are doing some religious ceremonies, so they should be disturbed. And he gives a logic also why the religious ceremonies should be disturbed. He says that yajnas are meant to offer the offerings to the demigods and ultimately to Lord Vishnu. And if the demigods, they don't get their offerings, so they will become weak, and they won't supply the necessities to the people. All the demigods who are in charge of the cosmic universal affairs, someone is in charge of the wind, someone is in charge of the rains, someone takes charge of the fire, and all these elements are regulated by these big lokapalas or the cosmic regulators, and they derive their nourishment from the people who do religious sacrifices and offer their oblations to the demigods. And Hiranyakashipu's plan was to destroy this Vedic tradition, Vedic culture, so that religion will be destroyed, irreligiosity will prevail. And Hiranyakashipu, when he finishes off with the ritualistic ceremonies of the departed brother Hiranyaksha, then it is time for him to counsel and console his nephews, his sister-in-law, the wife of Hiranyaksha, and his own mother, Hiranyaksha's own mother Diti, who are very much aggrieved by the unexpected and untimely death of Hiranyaksha. And we see Hiranyaksha was the biggest champion of the ideals, of the principles which Hiranyakashipu was after achieving. Hiranyakashipu wanted to be the supreme controller of this material nature, of this universe, and Hiranyaksha, by his might and by his atrocities and by his extremely arrogant behavior, he was trying to achieve the aim, trying to fulfill the desire of Hiranyakashipu. And when Hiranyaksha was killed, it was a big blow to Hiranyakashipu's plans. But still, he is a very diplomatic person, and he speaks to his nephews. He says, "My dear nephews, for heroes, your father was a great hero. He died fighting a great battle. And before the enemy, if a warrior or a Kshatriya dies, it's a great destination for the dying person." And again, he says that according to the fruitive activities of different living entities within this material world, people come together and they are separated. Just like in a restaurant, the different people from different different houses, different places, different cities, different towns, they come together, they dine with each other for some time, and then they separate. So Hiranyaksha says we should always know, however, that the spirit soul, which is different from the body, is eternal, unadjustable, pure, all pervading, and aware of everything. So when we hear these words, and if we don't know who is this person speaking, who is the narrator of this conversation, we might as well think that's a great enlightened sage is speaking to someone, because it is knowledge, it is the transcendental knowledge from the Vedas which is being imparted here by Hiranyakashipu to his nephews. He says, just like when Lord Shri Krishna says in second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he describes to Arjuna the eternal infallible nature of the soul. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavaka. So similarly, here Hiranyakashipu establishes the identity of the soul as eternal, unadjustable, pure, all-pervading, and aware of everything. But he says, when the living entity is bound by the material energy, the soul takes birth in higher or lower species of life according to the different kinds of association he gets, and accordingly he has to accept different kinds of bodies where he suffers or enjoys. He further says that if someone is being afflicted, if someone is being subjected to the torments of material existence, that is the cause of happiness and distress. There is no other cause for a living entity's happiness or distress, and we should not be aggrieved if we see someone is suffering because of his own karmic reactions. So he meant to say that Hiranyaksha had his own set of karmic reactions which he had to accept and face, and we shouldn't be sorry for the affairs. And that's how we land at today's verse. Hiranyakashipu has given a philosophical understanding to his nephews, what it is for a warrior to leave his body on the battlefield, what it is for a for the eternal living entity to change the bodily dress and move to his next destination according to the karmic reactions. And now he narrates from a very old history also. Hiranyakashipu, he narrates an incident which happened between Lord Yamraj and the relatives of a deceased person, and he's going to narrate this incident henceforth. So it is the chapter which describes the demoniac qualities which are exhibited to the fullest by Hiranyakashipu, and because he was the king of the demons, he was the best of the demons. That's what his son addresses him, Prahlad Maharaj. He addresses him as the king of the demons. And Prahlad Maharaj addresses Hiranyakashipu as the king of the demons, and here we are witnessing the hypocrisy of Hiranyakashipu, how hypocritical and selfish Hiranyakashipu was. He was aware of the Vedic knowledge, the scriptural knowledge, and he was using the scriptural knowledge to brainwash his relatives. Brainwash in the sense, Vedic knowledge, the scriptural knowledge is meant to understand one's own eternal nature and the relationship of the eternal living entity, the Atma, the soul, with the Supreme Soul, Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita describes that the goal of the Vedas is to know Lord Shri Krishna. Vedescha sarver ahameva vedyo. So who is to be known by the Vedas is Lord Shri Krishna, and he is the one, Lord, the Supreme Personality of God is Shri Krishna. He is the one who has compiled the Vedas, Vedanta Krit, and he knows the Vedas very well. Vedavit, Vedanta Krit, Veda Videva Chaham. So Hiranyakashipu is twisting the purpose of the Vedas, and he is declaring that the living entity is eternal, but there is no connection of the living entity. There is no eternal connection of the living entity with Supreme Lord Vishnu. He says that Lord Vishnu has lost his sense, and he is being partial, and he is punishing the demons. He is taking the side of the demigods, and now he wants to convince his relatives so that they can be on his side and support him for whatever nefarious deeds he is going to perform, and subjugate all the universal population, and fulfill his own selfish desires. And we see philosophical knowledge can be used in different ways. Lord Shri Krishna in 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, when he is describing to Uddhava about the different paths, spiritual paths accepted by the people who are aspiring for self-realization, and he says that one of the dangers for an aspiring or practicing religious practitioner, practicing spiritual seeker, spiritual candidate, one of the dangers for the spiritual seeker is to interpret philosophy to fulfill his own agendas and whims and fantasies, and which is not in line with the scriptural conclusions. Scriptural conclusions say that the goal and aim of scriptural knowledge, spiritual knowledge, is to take shelter of Lord Shri Krishna. But sometimes we see in so-called religious groups or in some institutions, the same knowledge which comes from the all powerful, all knowing, all merciful God is used to fulfill our own, to fulfill different objectives, to spread hatred, bigotry, and to create a very non-harmonious atmosphere which is not congenial for a peaceful life, peaceful material and peaceful spiritual life as well. And because of that, we see so much of disturbance and so much of havoc being created all over the world, and that's the motive and intention of Hiranyakashipu in trying to impart a spiritual understanding, so-called spiritual understanding, to alleviate the aggrievement of his relatives because of the death of Hiranyaksha. So really what we see is intention makes a difference in what we are trying to achieve when we are practicing a religious process or a spiritual process. The goal of a spiritual process is to purify our own hearts of all the misgivings and all the impurities, and come and lead a very purified life which has purpose, and that purpose is to unite with the Supreme Father Lord Sri Krishna in his devotional service. And we see in the Lord's pastimes, Lord Sri Krishna's pastimes, that when he deals with his devotees, he doesn't tolerate any tinge of the ungodly qualities in the heart of his devotees. As soon as he sees that something is cropping up in the life of a devotee who is sincerely trying to serve the Lord, Lord Sri Krishna, he takes charge and he takes the responsibility to purify that devotee. From the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we see so many examples. When Lord Indra, in the pastime of Govardhan Leela, when Lord Indra is very much disturbed, he is accustomed and used to be accepting the offerings of the Brajavasis and people all over the universe, because he is the supplier of the rains for all the living entities. But when Lord Sri Krishna, he notices that my devotee Indra is getting little bit proud, and it is a time for him to correct the course of his action. Then Lord Sri Krishna induces the Brajavasis to conduct Govardhan Puja. And he says that Govardhan supplies us with all the necessities of life. Our the cows get green grass, nice clear waters to drink. Govardhan supplies us with all the fruits, all the minerals, all the necessities for our cows and for us to live very peacefully and lead a life centered around God. Then Indra is so furious, and ultimately we see how Lord Sri Krishna, he very effortlessly destroys the pride of Indra by lifting the Govardhan hill on the little finger of his left hand for 7 days and 7 nights, giving great happiness to all the Brajavasis. And Indra, he comes to his senses and he begs forgiveness from the Lord, and Lord Sri Krishna forgives him. So it is not Hiranyakashipu when he says that Lord Vishnu is partial. Lord Vishnu, Lord Sri Krishna, he wants all of his living entities to come to their eternal position of being servitor, loving servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he facilitates the process in different ways for different people. For devotees, it may be a mild chastisement, crushing their ego and bringing them to their real sense, their real identity of being the servitor of Krishna. And for demons, for people who are dead against the principles of devotional service, even though they may be quoting big scriptural knowledge like Hiranyakashipu, he has a different plan. When the disease is severe, the treatment offered also is according to the severity of the disease. So Hiranyakashipu's disease was deep rooted, and it was the disease of Hiranyakashipu's animosity towards Lord Sri Krishna was deep rooted deep down in his heart. And we see the Narsingh Chaturdashi is coming. Lord Sri Krishna, Lord Vishnu, he appeared in one of the most astonishing, one of the most ferocious and very fierce form which has never been witnessed before. It is said the most fierce form visible in this material universe is the form accepted by Lord Shiva at the time of destruction. In the form of his Rudra Roop, he destroys all the cosmic manifestation at the time of Pralay, the cosmic destruction. And when Lord Nrsingadev appeared, even Lord Shiva, he was afraid of approaching Lord Nrsingadev and pacifying him, because he felt that Nrsingadev's anger, the exhibition of Nrsingadev's transcendental anger, is way too far beyond the comprehension of his own, Lord Rudra's own anger. So, and Nrsingadev, when he appeared, he had to perform a very major operation he had to perform, supra major we can say. He ripped open the abdomen of Hiranyakashipu and he took out the heart, which was the seat of animosity for Lord Shri Krishna and all the living entities, which was filled with so much envy and arrogance and pride, ignorance, lust, that Lord Nrsingadev removed his heart and he purified the existence of Hiranyakashipu. And we see that today's day and age, it's a very interesting phenomena. People can idolize anyone and everyone. Some people say that Ravana from Ramayana, who happens to be the next incarnation of Hiranyakashipu, in the next birth, Hiranyakashipu appeared as Ravana. So Ravana was a devotee of Lord Shiva, and he was a very great, he was a great scholar of the Vedas. Even though he may have done some ill deeds, nefarious activities, still he should be respected as devotee of Lord Shiva. And we should accept good qualities even if they are exhibited by a very evil-minded person like Ravana. As if there are no good qualities in good people, that we have to accept good qualities from a person like Ravana. So that's why it is very important that we, when we are following the scriptural instructions, the knowledge which is revealed in the Vedas, in the scriptures, it is accepted in line from a bona fide spiritual master and his bona fide representatives. Then we are not misguided by such kind of doctrines like accepting Ravana and idolizing him as a great devotee of Lord Shiva. So we know that a great politician knows how to act according to time and situation. So that's how Hiranyakashipu was acting. Even he was so much inimical of Lord Vishnu, he wanted to destroy all the devotees of Vishnu, all the Brahminical culture, all the cows and all the religious ceremonies he wanted to stop. But still he takes the help of Vedic knowledge and the nature of the living entity, the information provided in the Vedas, to fulfill his ambition of being the enjoyer of this universe and being the master of this universe, so that all his relatives, when they are pacified, they will help him in achieving his own goal of being the greatest in this universe. And on this occasion, Narsingha Chaturdashi is approaching. It is just around 7 to 8 days from now. It is a great meditation to ponder over that when Hiranyakashipu, a person like Hiranyakashipu, takes shelter of scriptural knowledge to achieve his desired goal, or to propagate his own philosophy of life. As practicing devotees, spiritual practitioners, it is an opportunity for us to contemplate and dwell upon this attitude of a demoniac person, which can manifest in our lives as well at different stages in our life. We might take shelter of philosophy, but taking shelter of philosophy may not lead us to accepting the shelter of Lord Sri Krishna, his bona fide representative, the Guru, and Vaishnavas. And ultimately, we may propagate our own agenda in the name of practicing spirituality, in the name of being a devotee. So Lord Nrsimhadev can wash off all our contamination, whether it is a gross contamination like exhibition of lust, anger, envy, greed, pride, illusion, or the subtle contamination that we might have in our hearts as being as using the philosophy and using a spiritual process to achieve what is not desired by the use of religious practice, by the use of a spiritual practice. And that's how we see Srila Prabhupada when he says that the greatest danger for a devotee is not by the attacks from people outside, but his own mind can make him believe what he is doing is right. Whatever he is doing in his life and whatever way he wants to serve is correct. And that is the time the role of a spiritual teacher, a spiritual guide comes in. If we are very careful and sincere, then Lord Sri Krishna sends us help in the form of a spiritual guide, and we can seek guidance at appropriate times in a very proper manner to further our cause of self purification and continue our devotional service. So with this I would like to stop here. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। हरे कृष्ण।